Good morning. I'm Kim Breshears, the Chief Marketing Officer at Potatoes USA. Today we're going to take a look at the modern potato consumer. Our mission at Potatoes USA is to strengthen the demand for potatoes. To do that, we have to have a deep understanding of consumers. So today we're going to talk about some consumer insights that we've gathered over the last year. We're going to learn about how they eat and make food choices, what they believe about food and potatoes, how they shop, and how life stages impact their purchases. We can have confidence in this research because we talk to consumers across the US and we make sure that the data is balanced to the US Census. We also use Circana and Nielsen IQ as data providers and analytics companies to really help us understand what consumers are doing. Let's start by level setting a little bit. Of all of the potatoes that are sold in the US, 55% of them are sold through the food service channel, whereas 45% of them are sold through the retail channel. When we look at the sales of these potatoes on a fresh weight equivalent basis, you can see that the majority of them are sold in the form of a frozen product, followed by fresh potatoes, and then potato chips, dehydrated products. So let's dig into consumers a little bit more and what they believe. We're going to start by talking about what they think about food in general and then their eating habits. So when consumers think about the foods they're going to eat, we want to know what choices do they make. Flavor, freshness, and good value are the three attributes about food that rise to the top as most important when deciding what they're going to eat. We have seen this data change considerably over the last decade. Today, less than 50% of consumers eat the traditional 3 meals a day. The eating patterns have changed and evolved, and I think it's important that we understand this as we market to consumers. One of the key questions that's important to understand is if they follow any dietary patterns. And in fact, 50% of consumers say that they do. When asking them what those dietary patterns are, the things that they subscribe to are low sugar diets, carb restrictive diets. Now, carb restrictive includes low carb, keto, and Atkins diets, low sodium diets, organic dietary plans, and clean eating dietary plans. These top the list. Let's talk about potatoes. What do they specifically think about potatoes? So first thing we need to understand is that we ask them what are their favorite vegetables, and potatoes rise to the top. This last year, broccoli, corn, and salad mixes followed potatoes' lead. But we can't take this for granted because potatoes were not always America's favorite vegetable. In fact, it wasn't until 2017 that potatoes surpassed broccoli as the favorite vegetable. When they think about potatoes, there's a lot of things that consumers like. Specifically, they really like the fact that potatoes can be eaten in a lot of different ways, that they're filling, they're versatile, satisfying, it's something everybody can enjoy, and then they provide a good value. Because we want potatoes demand to be strong for the long term, we need to understand why consumers don't eat, why don't they eat more potatoes? And interestingly enough, they say they feel like they already eat enough potatoes as the #1 reason for not wanting to eat more. But that is followed by the fact they believe that potatoes are high in carbohydrates, they're fattening, they frankly prefer other vegetables, or they believe that other vegetables are more nutritious. So these are things we need to keep at the forefront of our mind as we're thinking about marketing to consumers to strengthen the long-term demand. But the good news is that despite the reasons they're not eating potatoes, we've seen a shift in consumer beliefs over time. In fact, when we look at the data, this last year's data compared to 2018, you'll see that consumers are becoming more and more favorable to potatoes than they once were. For example, They believe that potatoes provide nutrients, is improved, helps me fuel my everyday activities, provides sustained energy, good for athletic performance, good for weight management, and that they're used and approved by athletes. In 2020, we started asking some additional questions just to help understand what consumers do believe, and we've seen additional gains in just the last 3 years on a few more attributes. They believe that potatoes are an energy-packed vegetable. More consumers believe that potatoes provide underconsumed vitamins and minerals. They're good for recovery, that means athletic recovery, and that they contain protein. So all of these changes help to strengthen the demand for potatoes over the long haul. In fact, the data shows that potatoes are America's favorite vegetable. The research also shows that they're America's favorite takeout dish, America's favorite side dish when eating at retail or at food service establishments, and they're the #1 vegetable sold in America. So potatoes do have the prominent position in consumers' minds about a favored product, which is great. Just last month, we completed an additional research study where we looked at shopping insights of consumers at retail. And there's a few interesting things to point out here that I thought you all would be as interested in as we were interested in. There's differences between the fresh potato shopper and the frozen potato shopper at retail. First of all, let's talk about the fresh potato shopper. 31% of the volume of potatoes sold at retail are fresh potatoes. The buyers are primarily female at 53%. Most of the fresh potato shoppers are millennials and baby boomers. About a third of them have children. 1 in 4 of them are college educated. 8% of the purchases of fresh potatoes occur online, whereas 92% of them are in the store. Now, looking at the frozen potato shopper, this makes up about 17% of the volume at retail. Interestingly enough, the buyers are 53% female, 47% male, same as the fresh potato shopper. However, frozen potato shoppers, 43% of them are millennials, and almost half of them have kids. 69% of them are from urban or suburban regions, and a few more potatoes are purchased online for frozen than they are for fresh, where 10% of the purchases are online, contrasted to 80% in store. When these shoppers make decisions, there's a few different things that come to bear here. For the fresh potato shopper, we learned that they have distinct beliefs toward potato types that they're going to buy. But interestingly, over 90% of them know they're buying potatoes before they actually go to the store. And 80% of those know what type of potatoes they're going to buy before they get to the store. A fresh potato shopper prefers to examine their product before buying it. And it's interesting to note that these pre-shop touch points have the highest impact on in-store purchases. So things such as online recipes, circulars, promotional ideas, that influences their buying decisions. For the frozen shopper, they too go in primarily knowing what they're going to buy. 88% know what they're going to buy before they get to the store. 82% of those know exactly what type of product or brand they're going to buy before they get to the store. Interestingly, online price comparisons and retailer websites drive purchase decisions, frozen purchase decisions, the most. And again, we have learned that these pre-shop touch points have the highest impact on in-store purchases. So I really want to punctuate that point. It's really important to have marketing and promotion before consumers get to the store because so many of their decisions are made before they get there. Let's take a look at generational insights. So while we just looked at fresh and frozen potato shoppers, let's drill down a little bit more into the generations. I'm going to focus on 3 generational groups here because they buy the most potatoes of all groups, and they're the most distinct. So the boomers, millennials, and Gen Z. And you can see the age brackets that are outlined on the slide here. Boomers, the 59 to 77-year-old adults, a third of them are retired. Their median household income is $77,000. 80% of them are parents, but only about 1% of them have children that still live at home, and they're predominantly white. Millennials make up the 27 to 42-year age range. Almost 80% of them are employed. Their median household is higher, the income is higher than boomers at $89,000. About half of millennials are married. 56% of them have children at home, but they're more diverse than the boomer group, where 68% of this audience of the potato shopper is white. Gen Z, the youngest group, 18 to 26-year-olds, look very different than these other two groups. About 2/3 of them are employed. Their median household income, no surprise, is lower than the other groups. About 10% of them are married and or have children. About 1/3 of them are students, but they are the most diverse demographic group that there is. Now, when we look at their potato purchases, you can see that these vary as well. Boomers buy the most potatoes. They average 11.4 potato purchases per year. Millennials a bit less at 8.3, and Gen Z even less than that. But there's, again, some distinction here to note. So when we look at boomers, they obviously purchase the most potatoes in terms of the dollars they spend, the amount of trips they make to buy potatoes, and the amount of repeat purchases. But boomers tend to have the smallest retail basket size overall of all demographics. Millennials, they purchase fewer potatoes than the boomers, but they have the largest basket size at retail due to larger households. And retailers take note of this and market heavily to the millennials because of it. Gen Z, we already established the fact that they have the lowest amount of potato purchases per year at this stage of life, but they spend a larger portion of their grocery budget on fresh produce than any of the other demographics. That's a key distinction we need to keep in mind. Now, earlier we talked about what the barriers to purchase are for consumers in general. Why don't they buy more potatoes? And boomers represent that list that we looked at earlier. However, there's some differences between millennials and Gen Z. So the order of things changes a bit here. For all generations, the fact that they believe they already eat enough potatoes is the number one reason they're not eating more potatoes. But for millennials, they believe that potatoes are fattening, they're high in carbs, they prefer other vegetables. But a new metric rose to the top 5 list here, and that they said they don't eat more of them because they make me feel full. Gen Z has a little bit of a different mix of reasons they don't eat more potatoes. Then the number 2 spot is that the fact that potatoes make them feel full. They also believe that they're fattening and high in carbs, but they also believe that potatoes are high in calories. So as you can see, we continue to have some communications needs to help consumers, regardless of life stage, understand the value potatoes provide. So hopefully this gave you a bit of an insight in terms of the consumer, what they eat and the food decisions they make, what they believe about food and potatoes in general, how they shop, and some of the life stage differences. But the great news is that potatoes are America's favorite vegetable. They're also America's favorite takeout dish, America's favorite side dish, and they're the number 1 vegetable sold in retail. So potatoes do have a very prominent role in the lives of consumers today. But the insights that we gain allow us to continue to market effectively to them, so we have long-term favorability amongst consumers going forward. So we at Potatoes USA have a lot of resources available. What I shared with you today just scratches the surface on some of the latest research that's available. In fact, the retail buying research I shared is less than a month old, and we are rapidly trying to get all of those research findings put together, and we'll be sending out and making available marketing materials that highlight this information and give even much more detail about the differences in the potato buyer. But we have these resources and a lot of others always available to everybody in the industry. You can access those through potatoesusa.com. That is our website that contains all kinds of resources for the potato industry. And then potatogoodness.com is our marketing website where there's tons of wonderful recipes out there and other resources, information about nutrition that can be found that you can use on a personal level or use with your business. And if you're interested in continuing to get the latest updates from Potatoes USA and research insights, please feel free to scan this QR code. If you're not already signed up for our monthly email, this code will sign you up for that. And as we have new information, we distribute that and make sure the industry is always up to speed on the latest information. You'll receive it in your inbox. It's not intrusive. It's 1 to 2 times a month at the most that you'll get some information from us, and it comes directly to you versus having to go to the website to find it out. Of course, you're always able to call and contact us, but I appreciate your time, and I hope that you are leaving today's conversation with a little bit more insight on the consumer and their shopping differences and behaviors. And I'm going to be around Potato Expo. Happy to talk to you in more detail. Thank you.